You have 5 seconds. 5 seconds before your mouth says something you'll regret, before your mind spirals, before your emotions take over. Daniel Goleman calls it the space between impulse and action. And inside that space lives your power. This book is about mastering that moment. The 5-second pause that separates the average from the unstoppable, the emotional from the composed, the reactive from the wise. By the time you finish this audiobook, you won't just think differently, you'll respond differently. Calm under pressure, clear under stress, and completely in control.
Chapter 1. Stop reacting, start pausing. He built his company from a garage desk to $1 billion valuation. Hundreds of employees, global partnerships. The press called him the next great visionary. But one meeting destroyed it all. A board member questioned his leadership. Just one remark, in front of the team. He snapped, slammed the table, raised his voice, called the man a coward. The room froze. Cameras caught it. Within 24 hours, investors withdrew. Within a month, the board voted him out. One moment of emotional reaction erased 15 years of disciplined work. That's the power of reaction, and that's why you're here. You can lose everything in 5 seconds, or you can gain control in the same 5. The difference is pause. Pause before you speak. Pause before you text. Pause before you send the email you'll regret at midnight. That pause is power. That pause is emotional mastery in motion. You've been trained to move fast, respond fast, defend fast. The world rewards speed, but punishes reactivity, because speed without awareness is destruction. You have a choice. Every single time you feel triggered, you stand at a crossroads. React or pause. Lose control or take it back. That's the key. When you react, you hand over control to the world. You let their tone dictate your energy, their disrespect shape your mood, their chaos define your day. You become a puppet pulled by emotion. When you pause, everything changes. You stop letting life drag you. You start leading it. Pause, breathe, choose. That's your new command sequence. Pause, breathe, choose. Because emotional control doesn't start with wisdom, it starts with a breath. Let's break it down. The moment your brain feels threatened, someone criticizes you, embarrasses you, ignores you, the amygdala fires like an alarm bell. It says defend, attack, prove your worth. It hijacks logic. You stop thinking, you start reacting. That's how arguments escalate. That's how texts turn into fights. That's how trust gets burned. But here's the truth most people never learn. The signal is automatic, but the reaction is not. You have a choice. You can override the hijack. You can interrupt the reflex. You can train your body to hold the line. It starts with micro-pauses, those invisible spaces between emotion and action. The moment your pulse rises, the moment your jaw tightens, the moment you feel that urge to respond, stop. Do nothing. Breathe in through the nose, hold, breathe out through the mouth. 5 seconds. That's all it takes to interrupt emotional chaos. 5 seconds to shift control from the primitive brain to the thinking brain. 5 seconds to rewrite your future. That's the key. Imagine this. You're driving. Someone cuts you off. Your instinct is to honk, yell, prove dominance. You've done it before. We all have. But what does it do? Nothing. You stay angry for hours. You carry that energy into your day. Now imagine the same moment, but you pause. You take one deep breath. You say quietly, "It's not about them. It's about my peace." You drive on. You win. You didn't let the world pull you into its chaos. You stood still while it spun around you. That's emotional mastery. Pause, breathe, choose. The power isn't in reacting. The power is in restraint. Let's take it deeper. Every great leader, athlete, monk, or negotiator you admire has mastered one thing: stillness under tension. They don't flinch when chaos hits. They don't explode when insulted. They don't let temporary emotion decide permanent consequences. They understand what you must now practice. The pause isn't weakness, it's precision, it's timing, it's control. It's not about looking calm, it's being calm. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about channeling it. It's not about ignoring the trigger, it's about owning your response to it. You have a choice, always. When your boss disrespects you, pause. When your partner provokes you, pause. When your family misunderstands you, pause. When the world tests you, pause. Because every pause is a strategy. Every pause buys clarity. Every pause sharpens your response. Pause, breathe, choose. Say it again, louder in your mind this time. Pause, breathe, choose. Here's the truth. Reactivity feels powerful, but it's weakness disguised as confidence. Pausing feels small, but it's strength disguised as stillness. Anyone can explode, few can hold silence. That's why this chapter matters more than any other, because if you master this one skill, this one reflex, you can walk into chaos and stay untouchable. You can sit in insult and remain centered. You can live in noise and keep peace. That's emotional control. That's what Goleman meant by intelligence. Not IQ, not talent, but the ability to pause when every cell in your body wants to react. The ability to say, "Not this time." Because when you pause, you see the bigger picture. You start leading instead of defending. You start living by intention, not impulse. And here's the final truth of this chapter. No one remembers your trigger, but they'll remember your reaction. Make it powerful. Make it calm. Make it deliberate. You have a choice, always. That's the key. Pause, breathe, choose. You just took your first step toward emotional mastery. You learned that control isn't about dominance, it's about awareness. You learned that silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You mastered your first moment of pause. Now, let's go deeper. You've learned to stop reacting. Next, you'll learn to control the gap itself, the invisible space between emotion and action that decides everything.
Chapter 2. Control the gap between emotion and action. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies your power. Viktor Frankl said those words after surviving the unthinkable, the Nazi concentration camps. Everything was stripped away from him, his freedom, his family, his name, but not his mind, not his ability to choose his response. That's the core of emotional mastery. That's the foundation of control. Between what happens and how you react, there is a gap. Most people don't even know it exists. They live on autopilot, Trigger, reaction, stimulus, explosion. Someone insults them, they snap. Someone rejects them, they retreat. Someone challenges them, they defend. No awareness, no pause, no power. But you, after the last chapter, have already started to see it. You've learned to pause. Now it's time to own the gap. Because the gap is where power lives. The gap is where character is built. The gap is where your future is decided. You have a choice, always. Control the gap, control your life. React fast, lose control. That's the key. Let's start with something simple. You're driving. A car cuts you off. Your brain fires up. You feel your chest tighten. You slam the horn, curse, accelerate, prove a point. That's reaction. You just handed your peace to a stranger on the road. Now imagine this instead. The same moment, the same surge, but you catch it. You see the anger rising, and you breathe. You hold. You say, "Not today." You slow down. You take back control. That's mastery. The event didn't change. You did. The gap was the difference. You have to start noticing that space, the space between trigger and reaction, because that's where emotional intelligence begins. Criticism is another trigger. You post something online, someone mocks it. Your coworker questions your idea in a meeting. The reflex is immediate. Defend, explain, justify. But when you do that, you validate their power. You let their opinion shape your emotion. When you control the gap, you do something different. You listen. You breathe. You delay your reply. You choose when and how to respond. That's emotional control in real time. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their approval to feel confident. It's not about being right. It's about staying centered. That's the key. Here's the truth most people never face. You can't control the world. You can't stop people from criticizing you, betraying you, ignoring you, or misunderstanding you. But you can control your internal space. You can build the discipline to respond from clarity instead of chaos. The gap gives you that control. The gap is your emotional firewall. It protects your mind from the noise of the world. Without it, you're at the mercy of everything around you. Every insult, every inconvenience, every piece of bad news hijacks your peace. You become a reaction machine. But when you master the gap, you become the architect of your emotions. The outside world loses its grip. That's the power Frankl was talking about. When you control your inner space, no one can control you. Let's apply this to real life. You're at work. Your boss criticizes your report. The old you reacts, defensive tone, excuses, emotional tone rising. But the new you feel the heat, you breathe, and you wait. You ask a question instead. What part do you think could be improved? You take feedback without ego. You turn pressure into data. That's mastery. That's maturity. That's control. It's not about pride. It's about discipline. Or think about relationships. Someone you love says something harsh. The easy reaction is to fight back, raise your voice, match their tone. But what does that do? It feeds the fire. It escalates the pain. Instead, you can do something radical. Nothing. You pause. You feel the emotion. You let the storm pass. Then you speak with calm clarity, not raw reaction. You say, "I hear you. Let's talk when we're both calm." That one moment saves the relationship. Because when you master the gap, you protect connection. You protect respect. You protect your peace. Control the gap. Control your life. Now let's get tactical. How do you build the gap? How do you create space where there used to be chaos? First, awareness. You can't control what you don't notice. Start by observing your reactions. For one full day, watch yourself. Notice the triggers: traffic, criticism, delay, disrespect. That's your signal. That's the beginning of the gap. Second, breathing. When you feel the trigger, inhale deeply. Hold for 2 seconds. Exhale slowly. This interrupts the emotional surge. It moves control from your amygdala back to your prefrontal cortex, your logical brain. Third, language. Replace impulsive thoughts with deliberate ones. When anger hits, say silently, "I have a choice." When fear hits, say, "I control the gap." When chaos hits, say, "Pause, breathe, choose." You're reprogramming your response system. Because emotion is energy. Reaction wastes it. Awareness directs it. You don't rise to the level of your emotion. You fall to the level of your discipline. That's the truth. Discipline is what keeps the gap alive. Discipline is what lets you stay calm when everything's on fire. Discipline is what separates the reactive from the resilient. You don't need anyone's permission to be composed. You just need discipline to stay in control when everyone else is losing it. That's the real power. Understand this: every great decision you'll ever make happens inside the gap. Every regret you've ever had was born from reaction. How many times have you said something too soon, sent that message too fast, quit too early, all because you reacted? That's why mastering the gap is non-negotiable. The gap is where your future self lives. The disciplined version of you, the wise version of you, the calm, unshakable version of you. When you control that space, you control your story. Pause, breathe, choose. That's not just a mantra, that's a lifestyle. Here's your practice for this week. Every time you feel triggered, in traffic, in meetings, online, count to 3 before you act. 1 breath in, 2 seconds of silence, 3 words in your mind. I have control. Do it 100 times if you must. Repetition rewires your reflex. Soon you won't even need to think about it. The gap will appear automatically. You'll feel calm even in chaos. That's emotional intelligence in motion. That's real self-mastery. You have a choice between stimulus and response, between emotion and action, between losing control and taking it back. That's where your life changes, not in motivation, not in goals, but in the 3 seconds where emotion meets awareness. Control that, then you can control anything. Because when you own the gap, the world can't own you. That's the key. You've learned how to create space between impulse and action. You've learned how to master awareness under pressure.
Chapter 3. Your brain's hijack. How the amygdala runs you. Every time you snap, you lose control. Every time you regret your words, your tone, your reaction, it's not weakness, it's hijacking. Your brain has been hijacked, not by a villain, not by society, but by a tiny almond-shaped structure inside your skull called the amygdala. This is the center of fear, the trigger of rage, the switch that flips before logic ever wakes up. And it happens fast, faster than thought, faster than choice, faster than awareness. That's why you said what you didn't mean. That's why you sent that text you wish you haven't. That's why you froze when you needed to move, shouted when you needed to listen, or quit when you should have stayed calm. The amygdala hijack isn't a theory, it's a trap. And unless you train for it, it will keep running your life. You have a choice. You always have. But only if you recognize what's happening in real time. You can't fight what you can't see. So the first step is awareness. Every outburst, every defensive comment, every silent shutdown, that's your brain trying to protect you from threat. Not real threat, but perceived threat. The same system that once helped humans survive predators now misfires in traffic, in meetings, and in relationships. Your boss raises their voice, the amygdala fires. A stranger mocks your post online, the amygdala fires. Your partner sighs at the wrong time, the amygdala fires. It doesn't distinguish between danger and disrespect. It just reacts, instantly, blindly. And that's the problem. When your amygdala takes over, your prefrontal cortex, the part that reasons, plans, and leads, shuts down. You stop thinking. You start reacting. Emotion replaces logic. That's the hijack. Let's make this real. Imagine a heated argument at work. Your colleague questions your competence in front of others. You feel your pulse spike, your jaw tighten, your chest heat up. That's not confidence, that's cortisol. The amygdala has pressed the panic button. You interrupt, you defend, you say something sharp, and within seconds, you've lost control of the tone, the outcome, and your influence. Later, you'll justify it. They disrespected me. They crossed the line. But the truth is simpler. You were hijacked. Notice the hijack. Name it. Neutralize it. That's the discipline. That's the work. You don't beat emotional chaos by suppressing it. You beat it by recognizing it before it takes command. You name the storm so you can stand outside it. Here's what Daniel Goleman taught. The amygdala hijack lasts seconds, but its consequences can last years. One sentence said in rage can end a friendship. One impulsive post can destroy credibility. One reaction can rewrite your reputation. You think you're defending yourself. You're actually surrendering control. So how do you break the pattern? You pause. 5 seconds, that's all it takes. Because in those 5 seconds, your logical brain catches up. The prefrontal cortex comes back online. You regain the steering wheel. But it takes training. The pause must become automatic. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. And the 5-second pause is the habit that rewires the hijack. Think of it like this. You're scrolling through social media. Someone posts something political, offensive, or arrogant. You feel that spark inside your chest. That's the hijack warming up.
You want to comment, to correct, to crush. But if you pause, if you breathe, if you recognize the hijack, you win. Not them, you. Because control is the only real victory. Notice the hijack, name it, neutralize it. The moment you say to yourself, "This is a hijack," you separate your identity from the emotion. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are the observer, not the impulse. That's emotional intelligence in motion. Not smiling through pain, not suppressing your reaction, but mastering the millisecond between trigger and response. You can even feel it physically. Heart rate spikes, shoulders tense, voice rises. Those are signals, not enemies. Your body is alerting you. It's saying, "Pay attention." That's your cue to pause. You might think pausing makes you weak. It doesn't. It makes you dangerous. Because now you're calm, calculated, and composed while everyone else is still emotional. That's power. You don't need to be louder. You need to be longer lasting. You don't need to win arguments. You need to master reactions. That's the key. In relationships, this discipline is gold. When you learn to pause before replying, you start to hear what's actually being said, not just what your ego hears. You realize most conflicts aren't about right or wrong. They're about unregulated emotion. And when one person refuses the hijack, the fire dies. Try it tonight. Next time someone frustrates you, don't defend, don't explain, don't retaliate. Pause. 5 seconds of silence is often louder than 5 minutes of justification. Notice the hijack. Name it. Neutralize it. Every pause builds emotional muscle. Every pause rewires your brain. And every pause proves that you are in charge, not your biology. Understand this. Mastery is not about never feeling emotion. It's about never letting emotion dictate direction. That's the difference between reaction and response, chaos and control, living triggered or living trained. The amygdala will always fire. It's supposed to. But you can train what happens next. You can choose awareness over impulse. You can choose discipline over drama. You can choose the pause. And when you do, people will feel it. They'll sense your composure. Your tone will slow. Your breathing will steady. That's not fake calm. That's earned calm. The kind that comes from repetition, not repression. That's what Daniel Goleman meant when he said, emotional intelligence isn't about being nice. It's about being effective. You can't be effective if you're hijacked every day. So practice the pause. Train it until it's instinct. You don't need their permission. You don't need approval. You need awareness. Notice the hijack. Name it. Neutralize it. You've just learned to see the trigger before it pulls you. You've learned to stand in the gap between emotion and reaction. That's real strength. That's mastery. You mastered your fear. Now, let's talk about the true currency of your life.
Chapter 4. The Science of the 5-Second Reset. Your emotions are faster than your thoughts. Your reactions are faster than your intentions. That's why you lose control. That's why you regret words, decisions, and moments that seemed automatic. Because they were. But there's a way to stop it. A way to interrupt the storm mid-surge. A way to reset your brain in real time. It's called the 5-second reset. And once you understand the science, you'll realize it's not meditation, it's not therapy, it's not wishful calm. It's a neurological reset switch. It's the bridge between chaos and clarity. Here's the truth. Your brain can't feel and think at the same time with equal strength. When the emotional brain, the amygdala, fires, the logical brain, the prefrontal cortex, goes dim. That's the hijack you learned about in the last chapter. The 5-second reset is how you reverse it. You don't suppress emotion, you rewire its direction. You force blood flow back into the part of your brain that makes decisions. And it starts with one command: pause, then count. 5 seconds. That's it. Not long enough to overthink, long enough to interrupt. Here's the science. When you begin counting slowly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you engage the prefrontal cortex. This act of counting pulls your brain's focus away from emotion and into logic. It's not magic, it's biology. Counting is cognition. Cognition shuts off panic. That's the key. This is what Daniel Goleman and countless neuroscientists have described for decades. The act of conscious redirection is the cure to emotional hijacking. Every time you count, you're not calming yourself, you're commanding yourself. And the brain obeys command. Try it now. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Feel that? That's not calmness, that's control returning. You've just sent oxygen to the thinking part of your brain. You've delayed reaction and created space for choice. And choice changes everything. You have a choice. You can feed the fire or cool it. You can explode or exhale. The difference is 5 seconds. That's the 5-second reset. People underestimate how small habits rewire big emotions. They think transformation comes from grand gestures, but mastery is built in micro moments. You don't train the mind in a monastery. You train it in the middle of stress, conflict, and pressure. The 5-second reset is meditation in motion. You don't need a mat, you don't need silence, you need awareness. Imagine you're about to walk into a difficult meeting. You feel the nerves, the heart rate picks up, the mind floods with worst-case scenarios. That's the hijack preparing to fire. So before you open the door, stop. Inhale, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your shoulders drop, your breathing steadies, and most importantly, your prefrontal cortex lights back up. You are now thinking again. You've reclaimed your power before entering the room. That's leadership. That's discipline. You can apply this anywhere. In traffic, when someone cuts you off. In an argument, when the voice rises. In a negotiation, when emotions start to blur reason. You pause, you count, you reset. The more you practice, the faster it becomes automatic. You're literally teaching your nervous system a new habit, switching from reaction to regulation. You have a choice. You always did. You just needed a method to reach it. The 5-second reset is that method. Let's go deeper. Every emotional reaction releases chemicals: adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine. They flood the body, preparing you to fight or flee. But your body can't distinguish between a bear attack and a bad email. That's why you feel the same heat, the same pressure, the same loss of logic.
By pausing and counting, you change your body's chemistry in real time. Breathing signals safety. Counting signals control. Together, they deactivate the fight or flight response. That's not theory, that's measurable neuroscience. Inhale through the nose and count to 5. Hold for 2. Exhale slowly through the mouth and count to 5. When you do this, heart rate lowers, muscle tension releases, and the brain shifts from the limbic system to the executive system, from emotion to intelligence. That's the transformation. That's the reset. Here's what most people get wrong. They think calmness means inaction. No, calmness is readiness. When your mind is calm, your action is precise. When your mind is reactive, your action is sloppy. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need validation to breathe. You don't need control of the world. You need control of yourself. That's the discipline this chapter gives you. You can't stop the stress from coming, but you can stop letting it dictate your behavior. You can't control the world's noise, but you can master your internal volume. Every 5-second pause is a declaration: I run this system, my emotions don't. That's the new mindset. That's the power of the pause. Let's practice again together. You feel tension rising? Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now speak. Now decide. Now move. That's the rhythm of composure. That's the timing of mastery. Repeat it enough and it becomes your new baseline. You won't even realize you're doing it. Your brain will learn to delay reaction without effort. That's emotional intelligence turned automatic. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being emotion trained. It's not about control, it's about clarity. It's not about the world calming down, it's about you rising above it. That's the key. So let's make this practical. Tomorrow morning, before you touch your phone, before you scroll, before the noise enters, do a 5-second reset. Inhale and count to 5. Exhale and count to 5. You're not meditating, you're programming. Then every time you feel your heart spike through the day, do it again. Train it like a muscle. Because mastery isn't built by motivation, it's built by repetition. You don't have to believe it works, you have to do it until it does. That's the discipline. Remember this, the 5-second reset isn't just a tool, it's a trigger for transformation. It's how you shut down reactivity and turn on awareness. It's how you stop being a passenger of your emotions and start being the driver. Every count is a statement of control. Every pause is a moment of power. Every breath is a decision to lead yourself. You have a choice. You always have. Now use it. Because the people who can reset themselves on demand are the ones who lead others when chaos hits. They don't get swept away. They create calm for others. And that begins with 5 seconds. You mastered your reaction. Now, let's master what fuels your focus.
Chapter 5. Silence is power. Win by saying nothing. Silence. It's the most underestimated power you have. Most people think silence means weakness, that quiet means surrender, that restraint means losing. They're wrong. Silence is not weakness. It is control disguised as calm. Silence is strategy. Silence is dominance. Silence is focus turned inward. When you stay silent, you shift the balance of power.
You make the other person reveal themselves. You force the noise to speak first. That's the key. Look at history. The greatest leaders didn't shout their way to influence. They controlled rooms with presence, not volume. A silent mind doesn't mean an empty one. It means a prepared one. Nelson Mandela once sat through hours of heated debate in silence. Everyone spoke, argued, and fought for attention. He listened. He watched. He studied every word. When he finally spoke, briefly, calmly, his words carried more weight than everything said before him. That's the power of silence. When you don't rush to speak, your words earn gravity. You stop reacting. You start directing. In conflict, silence makes people uncomfortable. Why? Because silence forces reflection. It forces the truth out of others. People start revealing their intentions, their fears, their insecurities, because you're not filling the space. Silence is a mirror. It reflects the other person's character faster than any argument. When you stay silent during conflict, you're not avoiding confrontation. You're controlling its tempo. You're saying, without words, I won't be pulled into your chaos. That's composure. That's discipline. That's control. You have a choice. You can feed the fire, or you can watch it burn itself out. You can react and lose leverage, or you can pause and make them wonder what you're thinking. Silence isn't passive, it's tactical. Every second you don't react, you reclaim authority. The world reacts fast, the disciplined wait. That's why the disciplined lead. Here's what you need to understand. Silence communicates strength because it proves you're not dependent on external validation. You don't need to explain. You don't need to prove. You don't need their permission. People who rush to speak are usually trying to convince themselves. People who stay quiet already know who they are. That's why silence intimidates. It exposes the insecurity in others. Think about it. When someone insults you and you stay silent, they feel it harder. When someone tries to provoke you and you give no reaction, they lose control. When someone expects you to argue and you simply look back, calm and steady, they start to question themselves. That's how you win without words. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being intentional. You don't suppress the emotion, you channel it through restraint. You don't react because you understand reaction feeds chaos. You choose silence because silence feeds power. That's the difference between the reactive and the resilient, between noise and mastery. You have a choice. Every time someone tests you, you have a choice, react or rise. And rising often looks like saying nothing. Let's make this real. Imagine this. You're in a meeting. Someone challenges you publicly. Their tone is sharp, their words disrespectful. Most people would defend themselves instantly. They'd talk over, they'd justify, they'd try to win the crowd. But not you. You sit back, you look at them. You say nothing. Seconds pass. The room gets quiet. Now they look unsure. Now they start filling the silence with excuses. You didn't fight for dominance. You let silence hand it to you. That's how powerful this is. In relationships, silence can save you from emotional traps. Not every argument deserves your energy. Not every message needs a reply. Not every opinion deserves a response.
When you stop giving every situation your words, you start keeping your peace. You protect your energy. You guard your focus. You don't need to prove your point to those committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need their permission to stay calm. Silence is not avoidance, it's elevation. The reason silence works is simple. It breaks patterns. Every argument, every emotional escalation runs on a rhythm, action and reaction. When you remove your reaction, you destroy their rhythm. You cut off their power source. That's what control looks like in real life. When you stay silent, you give your mind a moment to think. You let the adrenaline settle. You give logic time to return. And in that gap, you find your composure. You find your discipline. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. Not about pride, about peace. That's the key. Try this simple rule in your daily life. When you feel triggered, do not speak for 5 seconds. When someone says something disrespectful, breathe, don't reply. Let silence stretch. Let them reveal themselves. You'll be shocked how quickly situations diffuse. You'll see how silence creates space for logic to lead. It won't be easy. You'll want to fill the silence. You'll want to defend. You'll want to explain. That's the impulse of insecurity. But when you master silence, you master yourself. You stop giving away power through words that don't serve you. That's emotional control in its highest form. Repeat this to yourself. Silence is not weakness. It is control disguised as calm. Every moment you stay silent when chaos demands reaction, you're strengthening your mental armor. Every pause you take before speaking builds authority in your tone, confidence in your body, clarity in your thoughts. You're not being passive, you're being precise. You're not losing ground, you're making the other person lose balance. The disciplined don't speak first, they speak last, and only when it matters. You don't need to match their volume to prove your worth. You don't need to win every argument to protect your peace. Sometimes walking away silently is the loudest thing you'll ever say. That's emotional mastery in practice. So next time someone provokes you, pause. Next time a situation tries to drag you into chaos, pause. Next time your ego begs you to react, pause. Remember, silence is not retreat. Silence is restraint. It's not about pride. It's about discipline. It's not about proving. It's about preserving. You have a choice every time. And the people who choose silence don't lose. They last. That's how leaders move. That's how masters think. That's how you win by saying nothing. You've learned how silence builds strength. Now it's time to use that strength to fuel your focus. Because power without direction is noise, and silence without purpose is empty. You've learned to control your reactions. Now, learn to control your attention. Chapter 6. Train calm like a muscle. Calm is not luck. It's not a gift. It's not something the world hands to you when life finally gets easy. Calm is trained. Calm is built. Calm is earned. You don't rise to the level of your emotions. You fall to the level of your training. That's the truth most people never learn. They think calm people are just naturally chill. They think emotional control is personality, not discipline. They think it's about being born with some quiet Zen energy. Wrong. It's about work. It's about training your nervous system the same way you train a muscle. When pressure hits, you don't magically become composed. You revert to whatever habits you've built under stress. If you've trained chaos, you'll react with chaos. If you've trained stillness, you'll return to stillness. That's the key. The training mindset. You have to see calm as a skill set, like strength, like endurance, like focus. The mind responds to reps. The more you repeat stillness, the stronger it becomes. The more you repeat composure, the faster it kicks in when life tests you. When you train calm, you're conditioning your brain to pause before reacting. You're rewiring instinct into intention. You can't control what happens around you, but you can control your recovery time, the gap between trigger and reaction. That's the gap that changes your life. You have a choice in that gap. React or respond. Explode or observe. Panic or breathe. Train the gap. That's your calm muscle. The daily 60-second pause. Start small. You don't need an hour of meditation or a silent retreat in the mountains. You need 1 minute. Here's the drill. Every morning, stop for 60 seconds. No music, no phone, no movement. Just you and your breath. Count your breaths. 1 inhale, 1 exhale. That's 1 rep. You're not trying to clear your mind, you're training it to stay. When your thoughts wander, bring them back. That's another rep. That's another set of calm being built. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. You wouldn't lift a heavy weight once and expect strength. You shouldn't expect emotional strength without daily repetition. Train calm like a muscle. Mindfulness reps throughout the day. Now, expand your training. Don't wait for chaos to test your control. Test it yourself. Set random moments in your day as calm checkpoints. Stuck in traffic? Breathe instead of cursing. Waiting in line? Stand tall, relaxed, phone in your pocket. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence? Pause before you answer. That's a rep. Each time you choose calm over impulse, your nervous system adapts. You're teaching your body that stillness is safety, not weakness. You're teaching your mind that patience is power. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to rush every task. You don't need to respond to every emotion. You need to train your calm response until it becomes your default. That's how warriors train under fire. That's how leaders think under pressure. That's how you evolve. The Reflection Journal. Every night, write down your reps. Ask yourself, where did I stay calm today? Where did I lose control? What triggered me? What could I do differently next time? Don't just write to remember, write to rewire. This is your review session. This is where you analyze the data from your day. The journal turns mistakes into lessons. It turns frustration into feedback. It turns emotional chaos into a training plan. You're not journaling for comfort, you're journaling for mastery. It's not about venting, it's about accountability. You don't need their apology, you need your awareness. That's the foundation of calm. The power of predictable stillness. Here's what happens when you train calm daily. You start becoming predictable to yourself.
your reactions stabilize, your focus sharpens, your emotional recovery time shrinks. That's emotional conditioning. That's the power of repetition. When life throws chaos at you, you don't get swept away. You fall back into your training. When someone tries to provoke you, your breathing steadies on instinct. When uncertainty hits, your mind slows down instead of spiraling. When failure stings, you analyze instead of collapsing. This isn't magic. This is muscle memory. You've trained calm so deeply that composure becomes reflex. That's the goal. When you don't feel calm. Let's be honest, there will be days you fail, days your emotions win, days you react, you overthink, you snap. That's part of training. No one builds muscle without pain. No one builds control without setbacks. The key isn't perfection, it's recovery. Catch it fast, reset fast, get back to training. You don't punish yourself for losing control. You use it as data. Ask yourself, what triggered me? Then create the next rep around it. You didn't lose your calm. You just found another weak point to strengthen. That's the mindset. That's how professionals think. Why calm wins? Here's the truth. Calm people win long term because they don't waste energy on emotional noise. They don't burn bridges over impulse. They don't make decisions out of panic. They play the long game. When you're calm, you see clearly. You don't chase, you attract. You don't react, you move with purpose. The world will always reward emotional discipline because calm people can be trusted with pressure. That's leadership. That's strength. That's power. The discipline behind calm. Remember this. Calm isn't soft. It's not passive. It's not weakness disguised as peace. Calm is control. Calm is readiness. Calm is the weapon that keeps your emotions from controlling you. You have a choice every day. Train chaos or train calm. Feed reaction or feed response. You decide what muscle grows. If you want emotional power, stop waiting for peace and start building it. Because peace isn't found, it's trained. That's the key. Closing transition. Every rep of calm you do today becomes tomorrow's strength. Every pause builds control. Every breath is practice. You don't rise to emotion, you fall to training. So, train calm like your life depends on it, because it does. You've learned how to build calm through repetition. Now, it's time to master what most people never understand: the value of saying less, observing more, and protecting your focus.
Chapter 7. When chaos hits, breathe first, think second. When chaos hits, most people freeze. They panic, they overthink, they forget the simplest truth in the world. You are still in control of your breath. That's the key. When everything feels like it's spinning, when your thoughts scatter, when adrenaline takes over, your breath is the switch that brings you back. You can't always control what happens around you, but you can always control what happens inside you. That starts with a single inhale. Breathe first, think second, always. Why breath comes before thought. Here's the science. When stress hits, your body floods with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes, your mind narrows, your muscles tighten. Your body is preparing for battle, but your judgment is clouded. If you act in that state, you don't act, you react. You say things you don't mean. You make decisions that cost you. You burn bridges you'll regret losing. Breathing is how you interrupt that cycle. It's not spiritual fluff, it's biology. When you take a deep, deliberate breath, you're sending a direct signal to your nervous system. Stand down. You lower cortisol. You slow your heart rate. You open the door for clarity to walk back in. That's why professionals, real professionals, train breath control like a weapon. In combat. In combat, chaos is constant. Soldiers don't get to choose calm conditions. They have to make clear decisions in the middle of fear, noise, and threat. Special forces use what they call tactical breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold. That's how they keep their thinking brain online while the world burns around them. They know one rule: when your breath speeds up, your decisions slow down. When your breath slows down, your decisions sharpen. You can't shoot straight if you can't breathe straight. You can't lead a team if you can't calm yourself. That's not theory, that's training, that's survival. Breathe first, think second, always. In sports, every athlete knows the power of breath. Before a free throw, before a sprint, before a knockout punch. That exhale, that moment of stillness before movement, that's the athlete's reset button. The difference between a professional and an amateur isn't just skill, it's composure under pressure. When the crowd screams, when the clock ticks down, when the body shakes with exhaustion, the mind that breathes stays sharp. The player who forgets to breathe plays emotional. The player who controls the breath plays intentional. Same talent, different outcome. It's not about talent, it's about training. It's not about speed, it's about stability. That's the key. In business, chaos doesn't only happen in battlefields or courts. It happens in boardrooms, meetings, negotiations, and daily life. When pressure hits, deadlines, conflict, bad news, most people talk faster. They rush. They make promises they can't keep. They say yes when they should have said no, all because they forgot to breathe. Every strong leader knows this. Silence plus breath equals control. Before answering the tough question, breathe. Before sending that emotional email, breathe. Before making a high-stakes decision, breathe. You don't need to prove how fast you can respond. You need to prove how calm you can remain. Control your breath, and you control the room. That's not arrogance, that's presence. The calmest person in the room always wins. The 3-second reset. Here's a rule you can live by. When chaos hits, pause for 3 seconds. Inhale deep. Hold. Exhale slow. That's your reset. In those 3 seconds, you move from reaction to response. You reclaim your mind before emotion hijacks it. 3 seconds can save your job, your relationship, your reputation, or your peace. You have that power. You always have. You don't need permission to pause. You don't need validation to slow down. You just need awareness.
Breathe first, think second, always. Training breath like a skill. You can't wait for chaos to practice calm. You have to train it when life is quiet. Here's how. Step 1. Morning drills. Start every morning with 10 deep breaths. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. Do it before you check your phone, before you talk, before you move. This is how you set your baseline for the day. Step 2. Daily checkpoints. Every hour, stop for 1 minute. Observe your breath. If it's shallow, reset it. This builds self-awareness. Step 3. Real-world reps. Practice in small moments. Traffic, arguments, frustration. Instead of reacting, breathe. One conscious breath can change the outcome of an entire conversation. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally trained. You have a choice. Let emotion lead you, or let discipline guide you. That's the key. The calm within chaos. There's a reason elite performers seem untouchable under pressure. They're not fearless, they're trained. They've built calm inside chaos through breath work. They've practiced turning noise into silence. They've conditioned their mind to use oxygen as a tool. When chaos hits, they don't fight it. They slow it down. They shrink the moment until it fits inside one breath. That's mastery. That's control. You don't need to fight chaos. You need to breathe through it. Every breath you control is proof that you are not a slave to the moment. You are not your panic. You are not your fear. You are the observer, and the observer breathes. When you forget, you'll forget this sometimes. You'll snap. You'll react. You'll feel like you lost your calm. That's fine. You're human. The difference between amateurs and masters is how quickly they recover. The amateur spirals deeper into emotion. The master stops, breathes, and resets. You don't have to stay lost in chaos. One slow inhale is all it takes to find your way back. You have a choice every time you breathe. Let emotion lead or let discipline lead. Choose discipline. Choose calm. Because the longer you stay reactive, the longer chaos controls you. The sooner you breathe, the sooner you take that control back. Breathe first, think second, always. Closing transition. You've learned how breath reclaims your mind from chaos. You've learned that calm starts with physiology, not emotion. You've learned that clarity is a result of oxygen, not luck. Now it's time to take this training deeper, because control isn't just about breath, it's about the silence that follows, the silence that protects your focus, your energy, and your power. You've learned to breathe. Now, let's learn to stay quiet when the world screams for your reaction.
Chapter 8. The Emotion Trap. Why Reactors Always Lose. Every downfall begins the same way. A reaction. One outburst. One emotional moment that overrides reason. That's the trap. You think you're standing up for yourself. You think you're defending your pride, but in truth, you're being controlled. The more you react, the more they control you. The less you react, the more you control everything. That's the key. The high price of reacting. Reaction is expensive. It costs you credibility. It costs you energy. It costs you peace. People don't lose control in one dramatic collapse. They lose it in small, repeated reactions. Every time you take the bait, you hand over your power. You argue on social media. You snap at criticism. You defend yourself against things that don't deserve attention. And every time your emotions write a check your discipline can't cash. You can't win if you can't stay calm. You can't lead if you can't stay composed. When emotion rules you, logic becomes a hostage. That's the emotion trap. The world is built to trigger you. Look around. Everything is designed to make you react. News headlines, social media outrage, comment sections, conflict-driven content. You are surrounded by bait, and the system wins every time you take it. You see a post that offends you. You jump in to correct it. Now your energy is gone. Your focus is gone. Your peace is gone. Congratulations. You just paid your power as the price of reaction. The truth is, outrage is a business model. The world profits from your emotional instability. That's why silence and restraint feel unnatural, because they don't make anyone money, but they make you powerful. You have a choice: feed the system or free yourself from it. The less you react, the more you win. Case study: the moment that cost everything. Let's look at one powerful example. A professional athlete, millions watching, years of discipline, training, and effort. One game, one insult. An opponent whispers something under his breath, and the athlete snaps. He throws a punch. He's ejected, suspended. Sponsors drop him. Reputation shattered. All that work undone in 5 seconds of emotion. That's not bad luck. That's poor control. You can spend a lifetime building something, and emotion can destroy it in an instant. The more you react, the more they control you. His opponent didn't have to be stronger. He just had to be calmer. That's the lesson. Reactors always lose. The psychology of the reactor. Reactivity comes from insecurity. It's the ego demanding validation. It's the need to prove, explain, defend. But here's the truth you don't need. You don't need their permission. You don't need to explain yourself to every critic. You don't need to defend yourself against every attack. When you react, you expose what controls you. When you stay calm, you reveal your strength. They can insult you, but they can't influence you unless you let them. The person who triggers you owns you. The situation you can't stay calm in defines your limits. That's why emotional discipline isn't just control. It's freedom. Freedom from people. Freedom from opinions. Freedom from chaos. That's the power you're training for. Real power is quiet. There's a reason powerful people seem unbothered. They've learned the value of stillness. They know this truth. The loudest person in the room is the weakest. The calmest person in the room is the one in control. When you react emotionally, you announce that someone else dictated your state. When you stay calm, you communicate control, authority, dominance. That's how respect is earned, not through shouting, not through proving,
but through composure. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. The world respects restraint more than reaction. It's not about being passive, it's about being precise. You don't respond until it's time. You don't speak until it matters. You don't move until you've decided. That's how real power operates. You have a choice, every moment, every day. React emotionally or act strategically. Choose strategy every time. Energy management, the hidden cost of reaction. Every reaction drains your energy. Every argument drains your focus. Every emotional outburst leaves you weaker. That's why you feel exhausted at the end of a day spent dealing with people. You weren't tired, you were reactive. Your energy is your most valuable resource. Don't waste it trying to win emotional battles that don't matter. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to prove every point. You don't need to fix every misunderstanding. Let silence handle what your words can't. The less you explain, the more powerful you appear. The less you chase approval, the more authority you project. That's emotional efficiency. Reactors spend energy. Leaders conserve it. That's the key. How to escape the emotion trap. Here's how you reclaim control when the trap sets in. Step 1. Notice the trigger. The moment you feel that surge in your chest, that's your signal. You're being baited. Label it. This is a trigger. Step 2. Breathe. Inhale deep, exhale slow. That breath buys you space between emotion and action. That space is your freedom. Step 3. Delay your reaction. Don't send the text. Don't respond to the comment. Don't speak yet. Wait. Most emotional impulses die if you don't feed them within the first 60 seconds. Step 4. Reframe. Ask yourself, what do I lose if I react right now? Then ask, what do I gain by staying calm? The answer is always the same. Power. Step 5. Choose calm. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Because you know control always wins. You have a choice every time. The mastery of stillness. Mastery is emotional neutrality. It's not indifference, it's intelligence. You still feel emotion, you just don't serve it. You don't let anger speak for you. You don't let fear drive you. You don't let pride destroy you. You master yourself before you master anything else. That's discipline. That's power. Because when you're no longer moved by every slight, every insult, every comment, you become unstoppable. The world loses its grip on you. That's when you stop being reactive and start being effective. The more you react, the more they control you. The less you react, the more you control everything. Closing transition. You've learned how emotion is the enemy of control. You've learned that every reaction is a transaction where you trade your power for comfort. And you've learned that stillness is strength. Now it's time to go deeper, beyond reaction, beyond silence,
into something greater. Because calm alone isn't enough. You must build unshakable emotional armor. You must learn to absorb hits and still move forward. That's resilience. That's toughness. You've escaped the emotion trap. Now, let's forge the mindset that never breaks.
Chapter 9. Respond, don't defend. You've been triggered before. Someone said something that hit your ego like a punch to the ribs. Your pulse spiked. Your mind raced to justify, to explain, to prove. That's the trap. That's where most people live, stuck in defense mode, defending their worth, defending their reputation, defending their identity. And every time you defend, you lose. Because here's the truth. Defenders protect ego. Responders protect energy. Let me say that again. Defenders protect ego. Responders protect energy. That's the key. When you defend, you hand control to the other person. You react to their energy. You mirror their emotion. You become a puppet dancing on the strings of your own insecurity. When you respond, you take control back. You move from reaction to reason, from emotion to execution, from chaos to clarity. You have a choice every single time. The trap of defensiveness. Let's make this real. Imagine this. Your boss says, "You've been missing deadlines lately. Maybe you're not as reliable as I thought." Defensive you snaps back. "That's not true. You don't understand everything I've been juggling. I'm doing my best." You think you're standing up for yourself, but what you're really doing is bleeding energy. You're making it about your feelings instead of the facts. Now, imagine the responder version of you. Pause. Take a breath. Detach. Then you say, "Understood. What specific deadlines are you referring to?" That's not weakness. That's power. You shifted from emotion to structure. You redirected the conversation from accusation to information. You didn't defend your worth. You protected your energy. That's how professionals operate. That's how leaders move. The difference, emotion versus intention. Defending is emotional. Responding is intentional. Defending says, "I need you to see me a certain way." Responding says, "I don't need your validation to act with clarity." Defending is reactive. Responding is proactive. Defending drains. Responding builds. You can feel the difference in your body. Defending tightens your chest. Responding steadies your breath. That's your signal. When you feel your body tense, when you feel that spike, pause. That's the exact moment to reclaim your energy. The three-step formula: pause, detach, deliver. This is your playbook. Memorize it, repeat it, live it. Step 1, pause. Do nothing for 3 seconds. Not a word, not a sigh, not a smirk. 3 seconds of silence can save you from 3 days of regret. Why? Because the pause disrupts the emotional autopilot. It interrupts the pattern. That's the first line of defense against yourself. Step 2, detach. This is mental discipline. You pull your identity out of the moment. You remind yourself, this isn't about me. This is about data. Detach from the sting. Detach from the story. Detach from the need to be right. Because needing to be right is how you end up wrong. You don't need their permission to be composed. You don't need their agreement to stay calm. You control your response, always. Step 3, deliver. Now speak. Short, clear, neutral. Deliver truth without tone. Deliver facts without friction. Example: I hear your concern. Let's look at the timeline together. Or, I appreciate the feedback. What would you like to see done differently? That's not submission. That's command. You're directing the energy, not absorbing it. That's what responders do. They don't protect their pride, they protect their purpose. Defensiveness is an energy leak. Here's what you need to understand. Every defensive moment is an energy leak. Someone throws a jab, you react. Someone questions your decision, you justify. Someone doubts your ability, you over-explain. You're spending energy proving instead of progressing. You think you're fighting for your respect, but what you're really doing is feeding your insecurity. You can't win a battle where the goalpost keeps moving, because every critic, every hater, every skeptic will always have something new to say. So stop defending. Start responding. That's the discipline. That's maturity. That's leadership. Real-world scenarios. Let's talk practical. Someone says, "You've changed." Defensive reaction, "What do you mean?" "No, I haven't." Empowered response, "I have. Growth requires it." Someone says, "You think you're better than us." Defensive reaction, "No, I don't. I'm still the same person." Empowered response, "I'm focused on being better than I was yesterday." Someone says, "You're lucky." Defensive reaction, "You don't know what I've been through." Empowered response, "Luck is what shows up when discipline doesn't quit." See the pattern? You're not feeding their narrative, you're rewriting it. That's the art of the response. You turn confrontation into calibration. You turn emotion into direction. You don't shrink, you shift. The hidden benefit, peace. The ultimate goal isn't to win arguments, it's to preserve peace. Every defensive moment steals that peace from you. You replay the conversation. You dwell on what you could have said. You relive the emotional charge. But when you respond with clarity, you move on clean. No residue, no mental replay, just forward motion. You protected your energy, and that's everything. Because here's the truth. You can rebuild money. You can rebuild reputation. But once your energy is drained, your discipline dies. And when discipline dies, everything follows. That's why this matters. This isn't about communication. This is about conservation. Conservation of your time, your energy, your focus. That's the real victory. The challenge. So here's your challenge for the week. Catch yourself the next time you start to defend. Pause. Detach. Deliver. Count the number of times your ego tries to jump into the driver's seat. You'll be surprised how often it happens. Then, reframe it. Ask yourself, am I protecting my ego or my energy? Because that single question can save you from hours of emotional chaos. It can save you from pointless debates. It can save you from wasting your fire on people who don't deserve the heat. Defenders protect ego. Responders protect energy. You know which one you're becoming. The transition. You've learned to stop defending. You've learned to respond with control, precision, and power. That's a new kind of freedom. But freedom means nothing if you can't direct it. If your energy leaks through your words, you still lose. That's the next level. Because now that you can control your reactions, it's time to control your silence. You mastered your emotions. Now, master your expression.
Chapter 10. Live in the pause, the habit that builds empires. You want to know the real separator between amateurs and masters? It's not talent, it's not luck, it's not even intelligence. It's the pause. That space between trigger and reaction. That moment where emotion meets decision. That heartbeat where chaos demands control. That's where character is built. That's where leadership is born. That's where empires are made. You have a choice in that space, always. And that choice defines you. The power of the pause. Everyone wants to act fast. Everyone wants to prove they're decisive, responsive, sharp. But speed without control is chaos. Reaction without reflection is destruction. You can't build anything great if you can't slow yourself down. The pause isn't weakness, it's strength restrained. It's energy harnessed. It's wisdom in motion. The pause is the invisible edge. Most people live in reaction. They get triggered, they lash out, they justify, they spiral. They live like human alarms, loud, urgent, uncontrolled. You've seen it in arguments, in business, online. Someone says one thing and the other explodes. No filter, no thought, no discipline. That's not power, that's panic. Masters don't do that. Masters pause. They take a breath, they assess, they choose. Because here's the truth, the pause isn't the absence of action, it's the creation of better action. That's the key. The 5-second rule that rewrites identity. Here's your tool, the 5-second pause. 5 seconds of discipline that rewires your entire identity. Before you speak, before you text, before you post, pause. 5 seconds. That's all it takes to shift from emotional to intentional, from impulsive to impactful. You count it out in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the time you hit 5, your emotions settle, your logic returns, your power resets. You stop defending, you start directing, you stop reacting, you start responding, you stop leaking energy, you start leading energy. That's the transformation. This isn't theory, it's neurobiology. That 5-second gap activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reason, logic, and discipline. It shuts down the amygdala, the fear center that drives reactivity. In 5 seconds, you move from animal to architect, from chaos to control, from noise to clarity. You don't need permission to pause. You don't need approval to be calm. You just need discipline. It's not about control over others. It's about control over yourself. That's the discipline that builds empires. How the pause rewires your identity. Every pause is a vote for a new identity. When you pause before speaking, you're not just controlling your mouth, you're rewriting your self-image. You're saying, I am someone who chooses clarity over chaos. When you pause before reacting, you're not suppressing emotion, you're elevating it. You're saying, I own my energy. And every time you choose that pause, you strengthen that identity. You become the calm in the room, the centered one in the chaos, the person people trust when everything else is falling apart. That's what the world respects. Not the loudest person, not the fastest reactor, but the calmest presence. You have a choice to live in that pause or drown in your impulses. And make no mistake, every empire, every movement, every legacy
was built by someone who mastered that choice. The habit of calm leadership. Let's talk leadership. The best leaders don't rush to respond. They observe, they analyze, they act when it matters, because they understand urgency without clarity destroys trust. The leader who can pause in the storm controls the storm. You've seen it. The meeting gets tense, voices rise, blame flies. Everyone's waiting for someone to react. The real leader doesn't join the noise. They breathe, they scan the room, then they speak with precision. And in that calm, everyone else recalibrates. That's influence, that's presence, that's power. You can't buy that. You build it with discipline. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their validation to stay grounded. You just need the courage to pause. Because the pause is the bridge between chaos and control, between ego and execution. That's the habit that builds empires. The pause in relationships. Let's bring it home. Your relationships, personal, professional, emotional, live or die by your ability to pause. Someone says something that hurts. Someone misinterprets your words. Someone pushes your buttons. You want to fire back. You want to prove you're right. You want to protect your ego. But pause. 5 seconds. Breathe. Ask yourself, what outcome do I actually want here? Not how do I win this moment, but how do I preserve this connection? That's the difference between conflict and communication. You think pausing makes you weak? No, pausing makes you wise. Because impulsive words build walls. Intentional words build bridges. Every pause you take gives your future self a gift, fewer regrets. That's emotional maturity. That's relational mastery. That's leadership at home. The cost of skipping the pause. If you skip the pause, you pay for it later. You say things you can't unsay. You post things you can't unpost. You make decisions that cost you peace, time, money, and respect. Every reaction you don't control becomes a regret you have to manage. You've been there. We all have. You react fast, you feel powerful for 10 seconds, and then you feel foolish for 10 days. You can't take back words. You can't unburn bridges. That's why the pause is priceless. 5 seconds of silence now can save you 5 years of repair later. That's the math of maturity. That's the arithmetic of discipline. You have a choice: react and regret, or pause and protect. That's it. Training the habit. So how do you make it automatic? How do you make the pause your default mode? You train it daily. Start small. When your phone buzzes, don't grab it instantly. Pause. When someone cuts you off in traffic, don't curse. Pause. When you're interrupted, don't snap. Pause. Each moment becomes a rep. Each pause becomes a rep of self-control. And just like lifting weights, those reps build muscle, mental muscle. Soon, the pause isn't something you try to do. It's who you are. The person who doesn't react. The person who doesn't crumble. The person who doesn't lose control when the world shakes. That's the identity of calm strength. And it starts with one habit: live in the pause. The closing truth. Let's make this plain. You don't need to talk faster. You don't need to do more. You don't need to prove you're in control. You need to pause. Because in that silence, you regain power. In that stillness, you find strategy. In that moment, you remember who you are. The world moves fast, but the masters move calm. They don't chase every noise. They don't fight every battle. They don't answer every provocation. They operate on their own rhythm. They choose their moments. They protect their energy. That's how they win. That's how they last. That's how they build empires. You've learned to respond, not defend. You've learned to pause before reacting. Now you understand. The pause is the power. Because when you can master your stillness, you can command your storm. The world moves fast, but the masters move calm. That's your new standard. You've built discipline. You've built direction.
Every reaction you resist strengthens you. Every pause you choose rewires your brain for control. You've learned to slow the world down in 5 seconds, to see emotion, to meet it, and to stay unmoved. This is emotional mastery. This is Goleman's real gift. Awareness before action. Pause before power. Starting today, your 5-second window becomes your advantage. When chaos rises, count. When anger burns, breathe. When the world demands reaction, give it silence. This is how leaders think, how warriors focus, how calm becomes a weapon. Your challenge: for the next 7 days, take one pause before every major decision, every argument, every impulse. Watch how your world bends to your control. This is your new reflex. Power in pause, strength in silence, victory in discipline.